Welcome to the Barker Podcast Collection.
I suck, you suck, I suck at Call of Duty.
Welcome to the Not Playing Podcast. My name's Rob Howard and today I'm joined by
Marcus Hurley.
And
Well,
we were, I think, almost going to just skip recording this month and go to and wait for the new consoles to come out, but Star Wars Squadrons came out and I was like, well, I wasn't even sure if I was going to get it because I was waiting for the reviews, but on paper this game kind of sounded like the game I've been waiting for years. For so long, in fact, that I'd even forgotten that I was waiting for it. So,
I know what that's like.
No, I mean, ever since like VR came about, I've been sort of pining for there to be a AAA sort of. Well, I wouldn't say this is AAA. I mean, it's not AAA priced, but just something that was really high quality.
High quality,
yeah. Yeah. Space game, which is it's so suited to VR. It's unbelievable because you haven't got to worry about how much space you've got. And all the crazy different inputs. You need you need a joystick or a controller works just fine. But if you've got the HOTAS set up, it works even better. And so that and VR.
So, Rob, what's a HOTAS setup?
I can't remember what it stands for. Is
it basically a joystick?
it's the aircraft layout, twin setup, thrust and direction control. Can't remember what it stands for, something tactical, something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm just finding it. It's called Hands on Throttle and Stick.
That's it.
Is what it stands for. So
joystick,
you've got your throttle that goes up and down on one side, and you've got a normal joystick on the other that also rotates, around its Z-axis as well. So it allows you to do like your barrel rolls and stuff, as well as your left to right, pitch and yaw and all that. God, I'm not an aircraft expert or enthusiast in the slightest. Otherwise,
but you did
I would have been.
Have one.
I did happen to have one, yes. So, which I bought for Elite many moons ago, and that also featured VR, but had a very because Elite is a bit more. There's a bit more to that game, so it's awkward to kind of play that, look at the map. Although, according to my boss, I've been informed that has improved immensely over time, and so he hasn't been able to be tempted away from Elite, even in the wake of this, because obviously this is sort of in the same wheelhouse. But yeah, this is Star Wars, and it's basically X-Wing versus TIE Fighter Redux, for this generation. Having skipped several previous generations, this is as close as you get to the classic X-Wing and TIE Fighter games of old.
So is it a multiplayer job, single player, a bit of both?
Well, it is a bit of both, and it's got a fairly extensive campaign. According to the internet, it's about 8 hours, but for a game that I'm playing in VR, that's plenty. I can play one, maybe two missions before it gets a bit much, because it is fucking intense. Yeah, it really is. It's absolutely. I mean, I've tried it both ways, mostly because I will admit my current PC is not really my choice of PC gaming rig. It's what work sent to me, and was slightly better than what I had before, and that basically comes in at the minimum spec of what they say you need for VR for this game. So I've had a few little wobbles with frame rate, and I did play online once. In one of these fleet battles where you are basically in groups or squadrons, funnily enough, for this is called Star Wars Squadrons. And so you'll be in a squadron of Rebel versus Imperial, and you'll basically have to take down the other team's capital ship, which maybe a Star Destroyer or like a Rebel frigate. And so there's quite a cool sort of ebb and flow to these battles. Like we definitely found that we were fighting and we were getting owned completely, but after a few minutes we seemed to have turned the tide as we were kind of getting more used to our ships. But I've kind of sacked off multiplayer now because I feel like I need to know the ships better. There's all kinds of systems that I'm learning through the single player game that I had no clue about whatsoever, like diverting shields to front or back, or being able to target subsystems of ships and what your radar actually gives you. Also drifting, which I've just been taught by a AI pilot on my team, and you learn that by basically racing over this Star Destroyer and engaging your boost when your throttle is at max and then just gunning it left, so you sort of do this sort of drift as you would in a car, in Japan or wherever.
Space drift.
You had them. Yeah.
I don't know why I've got this mental image, and I know the functionality wouldn't be there, but to perfect it, I've got this mental image. You're sitting there and you're immersed in this dogfight, but I'm thinking of Star Wars, and if only, and maybe next generation will see it, it's got the better voice recognition capability. If you could shout out, R2, shift shields to the front, or whatever, bring that sort of stuff in.
Yeah. I mean,
actually,
droid
the people
repeat
watching
back.
you.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. No, I was using a voice comm program to basically help out with some of the various commands that I didn't have a button for in Elite. That's how crazy that game was. Like
right.
12 button HOTAS setup isn't enough. So that was pretty mad. But God, that was a while back now. But anyway, yeah, the single player campaign's very cool. There's like a prologue that takes place 4 years before the main events, and that introduces you to some of the characters in the game. Right at the beginning, there's kind of someone changes sides. There's like a betrayal, and that sort of sets up one of the main characters in the game. In between missions, you actually get to chat to your crew, the members of your squadron, and you're in VR, obviously, so they are as big as you are, or bigger in my case.
Or do you set your height?
Well, I have to... Actually, first thing I had to do when I set my VR up for this was I had to put a cushion under my seat. Because the way
you're flying a spaceship with a booster seat.
Yeah, well, I would have to because I'm short. So, but it's hilarious because you
Please
press a
tell
button
me
on
someone
your joystick.
said, "Aren't you a little short to be a pilot?"
Yeah, no, but I did think that immediately. But there's like a button you press. Like, so I'm sat here, right, and I'm like, I've got my joysticks there, and I've got my VR helmet on, and I press like one of the buttons on my joystick, and that sort of calibrates your view. And I kept being very annoyed that the X-wing cockpit was up here, like, and so I was having to constantly do this or look to the side to actually get a bead on anyone that I was shooting at. So I thought, fuck this, I'm going to have to employ some sort of booster seat. But it works fine just with one single cushion.
I'm curious how that works with everyone else, because obviously I'd imagine there's some sort of avatar representation of you in your spaceship or your fighter. So would everyone else see you as one of those sort of senior drivers, with just like your eyes poking out the side, barely seeing above the wheel?
I don't know if they render the pilots in game as proper people. I don't know if they've bothered doing that, because you're not actually shooting the pilot, are you? You're shooting the ships that you're flying after. But some games do that one-to-one representation, and it's normally one-to-one. It might just be the way I have my sensors here set up. I have the very first version of the Oculus Rift that you have the tracking sensors for. If I had one of the more recent versions, then it's got inside-out tracking, and you don't need that. So yeah, that's that. I'm about free. I'm on the 4th mission of the campaign. I'm now back with the Imperials. Before that, I was able to try out an A-Wing. which is different to an X-Wing in that it's faster. And the guns on it, I mean, I think you can amend all the guns and your shields and your engines, and you can tweak them. Like if you want something that goes a bit faster but is slightly more vulnerable, you can tweak that outside of the ship categories. So it's quite in depth actually. It reminded me quite a lot of the old games in that way. But yeah, like with the A-Wing, you're a lot faster, but you've got a shorter range on your guns, but they fire quicker. So you can it was a lot easier to kind of keep a bead on like slower ships like a TIE bomber. And I was just like, it's so great when you're in VR. The best thing is that you can, if a TIE bomber flies past you, you can turn your head, track it. If you can get your throttle down quick enough, you can maneuver yourself to such a point that you can keep a bead on him, allowing you to get a missile lock quicker. All kinds of little things. You can get supplies. You can call in for supplies mid-mission if you run out of missiles or countermeasures. There's all kind of nice little mechanics there to keep it fun. I mean, I'm in VR. I'm playing it on the lowest difficulty, lowest detail settings possible to get it to run at a decent rate, and it still looks incredible because it doesn't matter how many special effects or high detail textures you throw at a game, nothing can beat that sense of movement that you get from being fully immersed. So yeah, I'd say this is a I wouldn't necessarily say a killer app for VR, but it's an incredible application of that technology. And I'm glad that, I will admit, I did have to dust off my VR headset because I've not used it very much. But when I saw this was coming out, I was like, oh, yeah, that just seems ideal. And it's a nice little surprise at the end of this generation, I think.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Sounds good. Speaking of the end of the generation.
Yeah, we thought we'd close out, before we get on to our next generation in a few weeks' time with the PS5 and the Xbox One X launch, thought we'd maybe go over some of the highlights of the last 7 years, is it?
I think so.
About that.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, almost this podcast has been going almost as long or about as long as this generation has been going. But rather than just focusing on like specific games, as we did a few months back on episode 200, there's like a few sort of events or trends or things like that have occurred that I thought we'd highlight. Who wants to start?
Well, I think we've... I mean, obviously you've just been talking about virtual reality, and I think in its current form... When did Oculus come around? I would see this as a part of what's happened this generation. So obviously PC gaming's a separate thing.
Definitely. Well, it's PlayStation VR kind of made it, even if momentarily, made it kind of mainstream.
I'd agree with that.
And it was enough to pull Microsoft kind of almost into it, with talk of like the HoloLens and stuff, was on the brink of being teamed up with the Xbox consoles.
I think they're not out of the game yet.
Yeah, I know. But it's just the idea of the whole Project Scarlet, which turned out to be the Xbox One X. I think the HoloLens was going to link up to that as well. Admittedly, it was kind of like they were playing it safe with Minecraft when they showed it off. But it was kind of, I think PlayStation did enough of an impact for them to consider this is worth looking into.
I might say it would be quite interesting because obviously there was the whole at the start of the generation there was the Kinect debacle where they said the Xbox One was going to be every Xbox One was going to be equipped with Kinect, taking away the processing power and giving Microsoft a view into every Xbox owner's living room.
Yep.
And
I've mine's still unconnected.
That already now.
Mine's still unconnected. In fact, I looked in my Xbox box and wondered what the hell that was still in there. Lifted up a bit of cardboard and went, there's a Kinect, and then put it back away.
So it was an Xbox box, not an Xbox One Xbox.
An Xbox One Xbox One box on top of a bookcase.
Yeah, Oculus were founded in 2012, and it was mid 2014 was the DK2.
Right, so in this gen, I would say.
But the Rift that I have was released in March 2016. Which seems, I thought it was longer ago than that.
Don't forget, you also had this little thing going on between the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. And that was the main... Was it the Vive? Five, that was it. And that was the main thing, pushing VR, because you had these two companies taking...
The problem with the HTC Vive, Marcus, is the plugs don't work.
No, they just make you worse. But I know you'll see in VR again. I mean, that for me, even as someone who wasn't as interested in VR, the way that those companies were going at it at one point, really, and at one point it looked like the Vive was the better option. And then you had the Samsung Gear VR as well.
The thing about
that was a gimmick.
I know, but it was the fact that that VR had become so far that it was actually on the brink of being mass marketed to everyone, and that was when Sony had a look at their Move controllers and went, "We're going to jump in as well." Yeah, and I think if it hadn't been so on the cusp of being household goods, I don't think PlayStation VR would have happened.
No,
I think they would have saved it for this generation.
And there was also a lot, because of those two things, a massive community had formed around it, and there was a lot of like stuff that was going to be they could port onto PlayStation VR straight away. Wow. The differentiator really, because as someone who was very much up for buying one of these things and did in the end, the HTC Vive, what their deal was it was room scale, and it wasn't too long before Oculus kind of went that way as well, but they've always been more interested in portability and form factor and standalone. That's the way Oculus have gone, and that's where they're going now. In fact, I think they're no longer going to be producing any kind of tethered headset anymore. They're letting the Valve Index, which superseded the Vive recently, be the kind of gold standard for that. And there may be other minor manufacturers, but I think they're just letting Steam have it.
It's interesting, that.
And yeah, obviously PlayStation have got their own thing. I mean, I'd be very interested in a second generation Sony VR headset. If it's anything to stop me spending multiple thousands on a gaming PC to run an Index. I just don't want to do that. I like having money.
Oh, but the next one's not going to cost money. It's going to cost a chunk of your actual soul.
Your soul, yeah. Fuck me. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously we can't not mention the fact that this very podcast's early iteration was spurred on by VR.
Pretty much, yeah. If Pat hadn't been so enthusiastic about banging on about VR for an hour every week, this probably never would have happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, it's funny. I don't think I ever finished one of those episodes when I was just a listener.
But you slept very well, William.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. No, he was definitely passionate about that, and still is. So
speaking of expansions and the way that worlds and stuff have gone beyond our living room, should we move on to open world games? Because that was something that, whilst open world not being something entirely new, the idea of calling it open world. Exactly, you had Assassin's Creed, but before that you had Warcraft and everything else where you could traverse Great Plains and Guild Wars and stuff. But the idea of a character and you literally have this almost sandbox that you can go, and the story is it's either a collection of different sandboxes or one great big massive map, and you're either guided from point to point or you choose your own path. I think that wasn't something we saw on consoles, which is...
It certainly wasn't something we saw. We had the Elder Scrolls games, and not a lot else, but what I would certainly say is the open world has evolved hugely. I mean, Breath of the Wild, this generation, although I didn't like the game particularly, I understand it as a masterpiece in freedom and emergent gameplay, when you can decide essentially how you want to tackle a challenge due to these physics-like mechanisms. Is an absolute. Similarly, but differently, the Far Cry games, and to an extent the Assassin's Creed games, but less so. But in Far Cry, you've now got the processing power in these open worlds that all sorts of shit is just going on around you. These worlds are populated with people and with animals, and you turn a corner and the animals are attacking the people, and you can get involved, and that fight tumbles into an enemy base, and suddenly this story emerges. When really before you would have these pre-set NPCs patrol a place, and that is what they did. I think the power that we've had in this generation has really enabled better stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sort of trace like exactly where that transition came along, because I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5 was the generation before this one. You know,
but you also had the Just Cause games. I don't know how far back they went. I know they were basically like the Madness Sandpit games.
I've never really played them.
And you also had, what were those other ones? Oh God. One of the ones where you were basically in the Matrix. You were like President of the United States, but you were also in the Matrix.
Saints Row.
Yeah.
Saints Row.
They were kind of guided a little bit, but then you had elements of open world once it opened up and allowed you to.
I'm talking less about that. The open world has been around for a long time. Elder Scrolls Morrowind was one of my first, which was an Xbox original one and a PC game around that time, early this century. But what I'm talking around is how it's evolved and where it is now. A classic Ubisoft game was climb the radar tower or the area, open up the map, find the mini map, quest objectives and the chests and the collectibles, clear that area, move on. The gameplay itself has become emergence.
Yeah.
There's definitely like they've definitely kind of reached a standard of kind of like game streaming and immersion. Like the load screens have become less of a thing, I think, over time, with certain exceptions.
It's the trade-off, isn't it?
Just like, I think it was around the time of Witcher 3 that I noticed, like, you were able to kind of ride across a field, enter a town, go into a bar, and then up into a room at the inn seamlessly with no loading.
Yes.
And that was quite a lovely feeling, that was.
Yeah, well, so if you take Elder Scrolls as an example, you can go into this town, you can wander the countryside, and that was fairly well stitched together, but the moment you entered a cave, a dungeon, whatever, your load screen comes up, you'll spend a while doing this and doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the techniques, the refinements, and the power to support it have been a really, not a major, the load time's less so as a major change, but the immersion available within these games, I would say, is vastly better. Well,
let me know if I've jumped the gun, but I think we can't sort of talk about this or move on from this without mentioning the swan song of it. Even though I haven't played it myself, Ghost of Tsushima.
It's a good example. There's random people wandering around, random fights, fairly random encounters, a well-stitched together story system. There's no quest markers, just a gentle wind to guide your way, and a series of stories that stitch together. Yeah,
it's all about keeping you within that character's world without breaking it from having to bring up menus or a pillar of light beaming into the sky with like you said, a quest marker, and you kind of go, well, it feels like I'm reading a Google map rather than playing a video game.
Yeah, I'll just follow the mini map.
Yeah. Whereas this is more like, oh, I've noticed that's going this way. Or, like I saw in the demo, the bird
heads-up
flying.
displays. Heads-up displays, little things, but they've slickened down and they've reduced and reduced and reduced.
Yeah, I think Tsushima's a good example of maybe, like, all the things that have comprised the video game and what might be left behind. I mean, I know I was a little bit dismissive when we talked about Ghost of Tsushima first, but
You went back for the platinum, let's face it. It can't have been too bad.
Well, it was just it's like they just chiselled away, like there's just like this idea of a video game that you would send out in a space capsule, This is what video game is. And it's changed throughout the years to be, a certain thing. And I feel like, it's a game that you come into with a certain amount of expectations, all of which are instantly met. And some of which you didn't even ask for, like the load times. Or the Fox parties, indeed. Or the load times, being ridiculously fast.
Yeah. That was a surprise.
It was a nice bonus. And a sign of the times to come, I think, because we're not going to see load screens now, in theory.
Well, I'll be fascinated by that. You know what? Bethesda, Microsoft owned as they are, I reckon they'll still rock a load screen.
Yeah.
And I'm going to forgive them for it if their games stay, improve, you know what I mean?
Well, it's just widening the goalposts. It just means that they'll be able to, if there's a load screen, it means that they're going to basically deliver a Blu-ray's worth of content to you in the next second.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
There'll be some company that will go, oh no, let's not use this like this. We'll just totally push they'll just push it as far as they can, won't they? That's just what happens.
I'll tell you what, if that happens, that room interior is going to be incredible.
Detail on the cheese wheels.
Corinthian leather on the seats.
I was just thinking, if there's a way to consume a Blu-ray's worth of information in a second, it would have made the Lord of the Rings films far more tolerable to me.
See what you did there.
I liked it. Unlike the films. No, they were right, but they were just too long, was my point. The load time on those things was terrible.
The ending load time was long. I like those films, but I can still take the piss.
One other thing
too long.
on this subject, though, that kind of ties in, but this is around the memory capabilities in the process. One, they weren't open world, actually. They were both corridor, hub-type games. But the Shadow of games introduced something this generation that I thought was superb and I'm excited to see more of. I'm disappointed to have not seen more of already, but the Nemesis system that was brought forth in Shadow of Mordor and enhanced no end in the unfortunately, ultimately slightly disappointing Shadow of War was something else. To have these orcs learning and gaining and the intelligence of the game to realise that, if I keep throwing this guy at you and coming up with reasons he didn't actually die despite you seeing, you've chopped this orc's head off once, he's come back with staples round his neck going, hey, he didn't get me last time. And then you set him on fire because he's no longer prone to decapitation, and then you set him on fire and he burns to death and he comes back and he's basically this completely earless, fleshless guy with these skin staples around his neck and he goes, remember me? And then he's beefed up and he kills you. And then you get these missions to go and kill the beefed up nightmare that's killed one of your mates. And you can go across it. And there was some really lovely stuff there. I felt that was a real step up in gameplay to have the game tailor itself to you as you went. And I really am hoping and expecting to see a new Shadow of game, but without the thing Shadow of War introduced. That's one of my pet hates this generation, and that's loot boxes in single player games.
They leveraged it in a sort of Pokemon type way to get the microtransactions in there.
The worst bit is they deliberately threw in a massive end game grind in a single player game and then gave you an ability to get through it. But even the trophies on that game were designed to be hidden behind a grind that you're probably going to pay money for just to get your platinum. That I thought was unpleasant.
I did all that battle thing at the end and I didn't get the platinum because I was done by then. But I also didn't do any microtransactions. I probably could have got through it quicker had I done that, but I just had a 3-week Christmas break and was like, I'm just going to rinse through this.
Well, that was it. I mean, I played the game, I completed the game. I didn't complete the end game bit because they had trophy. You'd bring your orcs up to level 30 or something because you're commanding this castle, and there were trophies like have this many level 40 captains equipped with this legendary loot, and you're like, you just want me to buy loot boxes so I can get that trophy, don't
isn't
you?
it? It's artificial inflation of the game length.
So that I found abhorrent, and the outcry was enough that it was patched out. And I took a stand when Shadow of War came out because I was so disgusted by the loot boxes that I bought the game and didn't buy any loot boxes and let other people make the moral stand because it was good fun.
Yeah. I don't know. I could easily segue into more negative stuff here, but there's a couple of more positive things I'd like to mention about this generation.
You see, a little bit of me wants to say segue away simply to have said it, but now I've said it, so let's stay on the positives.
Okay.
Yep.
So one thing that I noticed has come up a few times in this generation is cross-platform play. So the ability for people on different platforms to play together.
Oh, yes.
So I mean, it's
crossplay.
Crossplay. Yeah. So stuff like Fortnite. I know it's not really a game I've played, but I think just breaking down those walls has helped. I think it's been helped a lot by Microsoft basically becoming a company that doesn't really care whether it's Xbox or PC that you're playing.
They're becoming more agnostic so long as they got a finger in the pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just want
by default, it kind of made Sony look like the odd one out, and they were reportedly being difficult about it.
Well, they were. Yeah, there's
because
no doubt about
there were
it,
loads of
because
articles
they were the big
with development companies saying, actually, it's all ready to go, but just whenever they've approached Sony about it, Sony has dug in and said no. But it makes you wonder what other games would have been if it was opened up earlier. Because it all tends to be these free-to-play ones, but you think a lot of the larger ones...
Yeah, I mean, you had Fallout 4, and I think Skyrim, when it came over to the new platforms, it was an Elder Scrolls of some sort. You get the construction kits, and Xbox enabled the published mods to be put across or discussed it, but Sony simply wouldn't allow the user-generated content to be made available, and I thought that was quite an interesting one. And I think that was another one where Bethesda said... Yeah, they're ready to play. And that's actually quite interesting because it shows Bethesda at the time had a maybe more open relationship with Microsoft way back when.
Well, it's interesting because not this generation, but linked to it, Sega were one of the ones to enable crossplay. Sega.
Who?
Ages.
Nah, not familiar.
Basically with Phantasy Star Online, a game I've mentioned like in previous podcasts, at one point you had the Dreamcast version, the GameCube version, and the Xbox version, all working on the same server.
Ooh.
It has happened before.
It was akin to a religious experience because you had Xbox only sort of like gear and stuff, and you knew that the Xbox players are on there, and it was crazy. I mean, that was literally as the Dreamcast was fading from mainstream view. But that was a game. I mean, I'm interested in getting PSO2. But that was a game that introduced me to the idea of the MMORPG, which I think is something else that took off this console generation a bit further. Simply because of the added power and everything else.
I must say, because I've never really been involved with that world, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I dabbled years ago, but I found that I just preferred,
I find
as
it
always, a
depends
single
on
player
the type of... I think it depends on the type of game. If it's something where you have to do a lot of faff, then I won't bother. If it's something you can jump in, you don't necessarily need to communicate to everyone else or necessarily have to have a chat option. You can jump in, you can create a squad, go in, clear out like an open world dungeon, fight a sub-boss, and people can jump in and jump out, then it's quick, which I think is why Monster Hunter World grabbed me. Because even though that's got a learning curve which starts off okay and then goes a bit Mount Everest, it's the idea that I've been playing with Korean, Japanese people, and you could tell by the names and the language and stuff that comes up, and we've never had to communicate. There's always just been like odd little stickers you can throw up, like a character doing a thumbs up when someone's like flashed the monster and brought them down, and everyone knows what to do. And if they don't know what to do, they kind of show you. and stuff. It's one of the best online communities I've seen in game, but also a little bit crazy on Reddit. But that's Reddit. But it's just, I think that's what's kept me going. And I think I think a lot of people got pulled in with Final Fantasy XIV. That was the game that got them, because that had an online community that was very similar, where people would just go in and help other people. You'd get these, and the same with Fantasy Star Online, you would get these really high level players that would just, it was almost like something out of an anime. You'd be like struggling to do this dungeon, and this level 99 or 999 character would just rock up with something you've never seen before and absolutely lay waste to everything and almost carry you through it. And you're like, oh my God, that person's amazing. And then they'll kind of like drop some money or something for you to help you out on your journey and then go. And it's that kind of the nice side of MMORPGs that I think that I've seen more of in this generation.
Cool.
I must admit, one of my things, and this is a silly little thing, and very much more relation to single player games, almost entirely actually. I think it's available on the Xbox, so it's going to have a very similar function, but that's suspend resume gameplay. The ability to chuck my PlayStation on standby, it goes into low power hibernation state, fire it back up, not need to reload the game, but essentially within a few seconds of firing it up, I'm back in the game and playing.
Yeah.
And I just think that's something that was super exciting a few years ago that we now take for granted. But I remember when the PlayStation 4 came out and it was announced that it would be a feature, and then it was announced that it wasn't a day one feature. And when it came in, it was an epiphany. Just the ability, particularly with games like Ghost of Tsushima or Assassin's Creed or over all of that stuff, to fire it up and then go through the load screens, then find your save game, then load that, and then finally 5 minutes later, having turned the machine on, be ready to play, compared to just turning it on and going.
Yeah.
That was big to me.
I think the new ones are going to be able to support multiple games like that.
Yeah, that won't work. I won't. I'm sure it'll work for some people. They might have a multiplayer game going that's essentially loaded to just hop in for a quick game and then maybe go back to their single player. I can't play 2 games at a time. I'm too old.
I'd rather obviously knowing how computers work, I'd rather that sort of, active memory be used to one game that I like, rather than split across many. I just feel as though there will be some sort of cost to having
I'm wondering if it's not about having it in, it's just the sheer amount of time it takes to fire up a game. You think about these load time savings we're hearing about the PS5, maybe it's just a case of how quickly you can blat between them. Could it be that?
I think that's what they're aiming for. I mean, when you think about how long all these games are and that they're all literally coming out on the same day, this is ideal for me. It means I can literally play 5 minutes of one game, then swap to another one and play them all at the same time.
Rob, you never play 5 minutes of one game.
Can you imagine you've just remembered how to jump again and then that button's been rebound and you punch your horse? Don't punch the horse again, Rob.
But it'll be like brilliant for like people with low attention spans. Like they play Dark Souls and go, oh no, I died again. Oh, I'll play something else. Bloop, and now you're playing Cyberpunk.
That's how I
played
Dark Souls, to be honest. I've bought several of them or had them on PlayStation Plus, and I've rarely managed to stay a few deaths. I was like, oh, you know what, fuck this.
That's what I'll do. I'll just have Demon Souls like on constantly on suspend, and then I'll
before this big
I'll just give that
boss.
a little go. Die.
I paid
okay, fuck it.
£70 for this. It's got to be worth keep carrying on with, surely.
Well, obviously, it will last me. It will last me for the rest of my life.
Money. That's good value there.
That is, yeah. So, but yeah, speaking about lots and lots of games, I guess one of the crowning achievements of this generation would have to be Microsoft's Game Pass that we've already mentioned several times and keep mentioning. I think that they're really onto something there, and they're using it as their. I mean, it's almost like a next gen thing, really, because they're pretty much betting the farm on it. But it's been developing. Slowly building.
I think
quality.
Where they're taking it is a different direction to what Sony doing with PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now is not actually a bad service for an instant games collection, but Game Pass is hands down the superior product, as far as I can tell.
it's still PlayStation's approach is still very much about championing their own first-party stuff, which is pretty high quality.
Their first-party stuff makes it onto PlayStation now a few months down the line. At the point it's been cheap a few times in the sales it turns up on now. So if you're not in a rush, you get to actually hammer through all of their classics. But Microsoft are giving you the latest games straight away, and that's different.
Yeah. From a wider kind of range as well, like of developers. And I mean, it helps now that they've also...
As long as they continue buying so many, yes.
yeah, that's true. But they really are putting their, getting their cock out and sorting that out, aren't they? Like
waving it in Sony's face, going, yeah. What do you think of this beauty?
I don't know, I mean, I know the history of all those developers and what Bethesda have got.
Sorry, going into that just reminded me why I'm banned from the local library, but anyway, sorry, what were we saying, Rob?
Waving your Xbox around.
I mean, I know that they've got incredible cachet, like Bethesda, with like PC gamers and stuff, historically and all that, and I know we've probably spoken about this before, but I still think Sony have kind of got the edge there with their exclusives.
It depends, though. I mean, it purely depends. I mean, Microsoft are basically the Ford motor car company. They bring out some gems, but they're a good staple brand, and you can almost not go wrong with them. Whereas Sony are positioning themselves as kind of like the supercar, almost hypercar market, where a lot of their titles are these blistering gems of creation.
What do you think of Wolfenstein 2, guys?
Didn't play it.
Haven't played it.
Freaking amazing. I've actually just played Wolfenstein The Old Blood, and I restarted the Wolfenstein reboot, and I realised how damn good these games are. And Bethesda don't just make Skyrim and Fallout. No. They made the Wolfenstein, the Doom reboots.
Oh, yeah.
Rage 2, which I particularly enjoyed, was my game of the year.
I don't play any of these games.
But that's the thing. Microsoft know what they're doing when they bought them. People think just Skyrim and old games, but no, it's the potential for new things.
Dishonored.
And like you said, Doom is doing really well, and they now own those guys. Yeah. So that whole idea of the fast-paced action and everything, that's something they've got access to. And who's to say they can't put together a supergroup from the various studios to produce something as a kind of first party?
If Arcane bring out Dishonored 3 and my choices are upgrading my PC because my current one isn't up to it, or just getting an Xbox to be able to play that stuff on, I would have to give it serious thought.
Yeah, I know, I'm with you there completely. Like, but I just, there's just nothing. There's not a lot that tempts me over that way. But
that's what I mean. That's why I was using my weird analogy, which obviously bored the hell out of Will. Because because that's the thing. A lot of people, it's like, I'll buy something. Oh, they do a Mustang. I'll grab that. That's pretty cool for a Ford product. I'm not going to spend whatever X amount of money on like a Ferrari, even though it is clearly the superior product.
Oh, I don't know.
But I mean, there are some Sony titles that you just think, how the hell has this been made? This is just like amazing. I feel like I'm not only playing a game, I'm witnessing a piece of media entertainment that's going into my eyeballs and I can interact with it directly.
Yeah, well, no, Xbox aren't trying to play Sony at their own game, though.
No, that's what I mean.
We love a big, open-world, single-player, storytelling, epic masterpiece, and that's what Sony do really well. But what Microsoft have bought are developers that do stuff outside of that. They do the slickest... They've got ID Software and Machine Games who do the most awesome first-person shooters.
Do you know who I think they have to thank? True. I think they have to thank Nintendo. Because everyone slagged off Nintendo at the start of that generation... doing their own thing. And Nintendo have survived because they do their own thing. So Microsoft have realised we can't go to direct war with PlayStation, having exactly the same games and all that. We need to offer something different. We need to find our own way of doing video games, be it money, and just offer that. So if you're not playing the latest and greatest from Sony, if you can be tempted with like the Game Pass and everything else, and a console that isn't quite as expensive as a backup, doesn't matter if it's your second console, or if you come to them eventually, you've still bought from Microsoft, and they still made a sale. But remember, and they still have someone else in their ecosphere. So they might not be going for the granddaddy-o, they will be for some, but by having that Xbox S as well, whatever XS, NXS, whatever it's called.
The series,
they've also set themselves
the Xbox
up as
series, I believe, is the next generation.
They've set themselves up as the second alternative.
But I disagree. What I would say, if you look at the US market, they love an FPS, right?
Yeah.
By buying Bethesda, who do a damn good Western RPG, they've also bought some of the best FPS companies in the world, in the market. The US market particularly loves an FPS to COD players, Battlefield players.
COD's still massive. I mean, you can take the piss, but it is a massive market.
Anyway, sorry, we're going quite heavily on the Bethesda thing. Right, all that is good about the generation. Have we got any other good things, or should we start slagging off the nastiness?
Yeah, let's start moaning.
I don't know, I think jumping into laying the way for early 4K was a good one as well.
Yes, 4K gaming has become an expectation.
1080p. Yeah. They could have rested on 1080p.
You look at the new consoles, they're saying they're 8K ready. We don't need 8K.
No.
I said the same about 4K, be fair. So.
Yeah, we had that mid-generation kind of jump, didn't we? Where they stopped. Well, basically, Sony wanted to sell some 4K tellies, so they made a super duper 4K version of the PlayStation 4. And I don't know, were they first or was Xbox first?
One X came out first, but I think Sony may have announced the capability first.
S has HDR, but I don't think it's full 4K. I don't know.
It's got to be 4K.
Oh, no,
that's true.
The Pro came out. Pro came out before the One X. Is it the One X or is it?
No, but there was the S, the S one, the white one, which came off after the Xbox.
Oh,
so the Xbox
that
One,
was like their.
Then the Xbox One S.
remodel.
What came after the PS3? Was it the PS4? Or...
No, 19.
Oh, Microsoft, you mad bastards.
But that's the thing, I think they've got stuck on the names, because they did the Xbox One, then they did the One S, then they did the Xbox One X. And now they've done the Xbox Series X, then Series S.
I think they just dropped a load of Xbox LSD.
Seriously? I don't know. It's a bit crazy, but, God bless them.
Yeah, they both come out on the same day.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Hang on.
The S and the Pro, the One X
PlayStation,
came out after.
What was the one that came out that was the competitor to the PlayStation 4 Pro?
The One X.
The One X was the later one that came out. The Pro was already out.
Xbox Series X is coming out 10th of November. So Xbox One X.
See, Rob does a video games podcast.
You've got the Xbox One, which was the base.
Yeah, but this
is
model, just absolute pain in the arse.
I know.
This is.
You've got this is why they've sold more.
Back away from the conversation.
Yeah, Rob, you've got the Xbox One, which was the base model, the sideways one.
I've got a spreadsheet now. I've got a spreadsheet.
They had the One S. The One S was Rob, it's the white one, the white console that is a mini Xbox One. That's the Xbox One S.
PlayStation 4 Pro came out on the
first day of Christmas. No,
launched on November the 10th, 2016.
Okay.
Xbox One X came out almost a year later.
Yeah.
What about the S?
I was correct. I just wanted to check that I was right about that. It was Sony that wanted to sell some 4K TVs, and that's why it existed.
Yeah, the One S came out because the mid-gen refresh was kicked off by Sony. Microsoft didn't have time to catch up with the One X, but then they managed to put out a more powerful console because they had the time to do it. So it was interesting. So mid-generation refresh actually is I don't know if it's a good or a bad or simply a thing.
Well, we already mentioned microtransactions, so we don't need to talk about that anymore.
No. I've got one more good thing.
Ooh.
Okay.
One more good thing. The ability to play your game saves in more than one location. The end of the DRM
Cloud
stuff.
saves.
That was the bane of the PS3 generation.
I'll go with that. I found it useful. I was rocking two PlayStations, one upstairs, one downstairs.
Yeah.
I had my living room PlayStation when the kids weren't around, but if I needed to go and play PlayStation upstairs because toddlers get upset by all the blood and gore and stuff, I could just make sure I had my cloud save and go upstairs, not having to do some sort of memory card switch. So that was cool.
The return of the second-hand market kind of thing, the idea of being able to share games and, your game save and your game not being tied to your console so much and all that sort of stuff. That was nice to see Sony kind of take a step back from that, because that really hurt me in the previous generation. I did feel betrayed. I was one of those butthurt Sony fans.
Actually, another cool thing, I didn't actually use it an awful lot myself, was the digital copies. You could have a primary and a secondary machine, so you could have multiple copies on the same machine and multiplayer over the two, which I thought was quite cool as well. It was only a little thing, but I liked that.
Yeah, no, that was good. That's what I've been using.
Right. Is it moan time?
Yeah.
Yeah, can do. I mean, there's positives and minuses to the way that it's gone, but I was a little bit peeved over the whole trend of games as a service, which kind of carries on from microtransactions. I mean, the positives about it, less games, which I'm quite happy about. Really, I mean, there were too many games. There still are too many games, but games as a service, stuff like Destiny. I mean, stuff like Destiny's fine, stuff that's conceived that way from the beginning, when there wasn't so much of it. Fortnite as well, massively. I mean, Fortnite has massively reduced the need for video games, generally, I think. Other video
the constantly changing, the constantly updated game to bring people back. So I see where you're coming from, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does mean that there was a danger. There's the downside of that is that things like Avengers were massively compromised with that model, because if you want to play Thor, you want to play Thor, not some shit version of Thor that you've got to upgrade to turn into Thor, or a version of Hulk that is constantly upgraded with fuck all, because he's the Hulk and that's it.
Yeah, I must admit, normally, before Marvel's Avengers came out, if you Googled Grind and Thor, which I can't recommend, right? You wouldn't have just found commentaries on the games. I don't dare Google it when I think about it, but I think I know what I might find.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were an interesting thing. And so at the start of the generation for the game as a service, what we'd actually seen was almost the entire demise of the AA game. It was AAA or nothing. And then the indies came back. And what we've actually seen is the rise from indie, I would say, back towards the AA games. You look at things like Wasteland and the Outer Worlds, and things around that level, not the super polished. Larian have come and found their place. Yeah. I kind of wonder if they, if there's a relationship between the reduction in AAA and the additional effort required on those, combined with the other studios putting their attention on the games as a service, which has actually opened up the market for the more polished independent game, which is what you might call the AA titles. So maybe the rough comes with the smooth, or vice versa.
It's definitely changed the landscape, and it's gobbled up a lot of studios in the same way, because that's why I was always kind of flying the flag for Avengers to be good, because that came out instead of lots of Deus Ex and Tomb Raider games.
True.
We probably would have had a couple of games a piece in each of those franchises in the time they spent dicking around with that fucking turkey of a game.
Or maybe just a decent single-player or basic multiplayer Avengers game that had a beginning and an end and a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? They could have made two different games, two different Avengers games.
They could have had an online mode that had all of the nonsense that people were doing in that game, just like almost a bit like a COD game. I hate to say it, but a COD game with its single-player campaign storyline that's really good, and you don't need to do anything else with it.
But there will be a lot of teenage, early 20s boys and girls out there who sit down with their mates and they just grind through Avengers whilst chatting away. And it's what they do on a Friday night, right? Because it's not to our tastes as miserable old gits, and I will speak for all of us when I say this.
I just think it's a real shame, really.
It's a vehicle for money. I'm not a big fan of the Fast and Furious films, but some bastard buys them.
I did enjoy them. I got to horribly admit. I sat down and marathoned them all one day, with like a couple of beers. I kind of went into full jock mode.
I watched the first one when it came out.
But that's a series that has pivoted. My God, I mean, I didn't catch up with them until I realised what they had turned into. Which was just mindless action films.
Maybe that was a bad example, but actually mindless action does seem to work.
No, actually, you're right. I tell you what, Hobbs and Shaw is the Marvel Avengers game we deserved.
I don't know what that means, but
that's quite fun.
Cool.
Anyone got anything else? I know games as a service is quite a big topic, but I'm happy to move on.
Actually, no, because it's what happens all the time. I was going to say things like Anthem and stuff, where you get
games
the
as
trailer.
A service.
The game that comes out isn't the game that is released. You know, the whole game, everything. But that's been going since the dawn of time. Yeah.
It's games as a service.
But yeah, Anthem was part of the, I'd agree. But I mean, there was also been cancellations and failures and flops and bad execution of otherwise good ideas, and that is simply life of the generation. But I'd say it's been a good generation, right?
Are we ending the generational talk now, or are we carrying on?
If you have something more to say.
Cool. Well, one thing that I have noticed, the service thing as well, the Battle Royale was definitely something that kicked off more.
I would say the Battle Royale trend is an absolute thing of this generation, you're right.
It's
to the
huge.
Point where it got built in Fallout and got built in Call of Duty, and it got built in Tetris!
Yeah.
For the love of God!
Tetris 99, Tetris 99 is crazy.
But it resulted in one of the most fun, ridiculous Takeshi's Castle tributes ever.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not all bad.
Fall Guys, yeah.
But it's definitely a trend.
I think that was definitely an E3 prediction of mine, was that we were going to get Battle Royale fucking everything.
I must admit, you said Fallout Battle Royale and you actually got it right. Terrifyingly. I know that was a limited number, but yeah.
Yeah, well, they needed to do something with that, didn't they?
What they did
actually made any difference.
No, it did. I mean, what it managed to do was lower their share price enough that Microsoft could afford them.
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah.
So you
that
wonder...
probably was there. That probably is. We've got Fallout 76 to thank for that.
Was it Don Metric or something? Do you wonder if Bethesda took him on as an advisor, Mr. Genius PS1 launch? He's like, you know what we should do, guys? We should do an online Fallout.
Yeah, and if it's no good, we'll just buy them.
Yeah.
What we need is Bethesda, but just not as good. Not as high, share price.
Yeah, Bethesda don't.
Let's tank them.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. The only other thing I wanted to mention is cloud gaming, because that's been a thing.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Well, it's tried to be a thing.
Starting. I wouldn't call it a thing from this generation. I would call it a thing in its infancy that I see as next generation still.
It could possibly be the generation after this is basically what cloud gaming is. It's kind of
PS6-ish. You talking, or are
we
talking?
If they ever, PS6, maybe, or maybe even before that, as these things launch.
Yeah, I think we're going to see 2 to 3 years it gets serious. So I think Amazon threw their hats in the ring? Although they then recently cancelled their big headline game that released and launched officially as a free-to-play and then went into closed beta, and now they've just said, yeah, it's dead. So Amazon I don't see as a competitor in the gaming world. Watch this space for how wrong I am.
I would love for PS6 to actually be like the return of the iBo.
I just want to know what the Microsoft console is going to be called.
It's going to be called the Xbox One X.
Xbox 361 X box.
No.
You heard it here first.
It's just going to be called X.
Yeah, they'll probably get to that point. That was the only thing I wanted to mention. Just the fact that we've got Stadia is trying to be a thing, but Microsoft is combating that with Game Pass because that is too much of a good value proposition.
So what was that? What was the memorable renaming of the Xbox? We discussed it in the last episode. I'm sure you should remember it. The memorable renaming of the Xbox
iCloud, playing games in the clouds with Xbox
Pass Ultimate.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think you got it.
That's the one. Yeah, nailed it. Just today though, Matt told me, oh yeah, if you buy this free game on Epic Game Store, you get a £10 voucher. And then I was like, brilliant. So what am I going to use the £10 voucher on? I wonder if they've got Gears Tactics. Gears is by Epic, isn't it? Fucking have they? No. Go on Game Pass. Download Gears Tactics. It's like,
mate,
don't need
you
to
think
buy it.
Microsoft are going to let Gears go? You mean Gears of War, innit?
Yeah, I know. It's more of a Microsoft game than
Gears
it is an
of
Epic
War
game,
is
isn't it?
something they're going to keep close to their nuts.
Well, they're not exactly swimming in original IP, are they?
No, but whilst Xbox are swinging their dick around, the two balls underneath are going to be Halo and Gears, and that's it.
Oh, I've got this mental image of this massive genital Newton's cradle going on now. So for those that haven't got the video, just try and imagine one hand moving connecting with the other, the next hand moving. But there's a note to finish on, right?
Oh, definitely. Thanks for listening to the Not Playing Podcast, part of the Not Listening Podcast Network, where you can also find the Not Watching Podcast, where me and Marcus talk about movies and TV, and the Not Listening Podcast, where you can hear Adam, Ash and Will talk about all kinds of nonsensical nonsense. You can email us at notplayingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet out or follow us on Twitter at notplayingpod. You can find the show notes for all our shows at notlistening.co.uk. And if you like what you've heard there, please do leave us a review. Anyway, that's all for now. Until next time, stay safe out there.
Time to agree, 'cause I suck at Call of Duty. There's no hope for me. I suck at Call of Duty. I suck at Call of Duty. There's no hope for me. I suck at Call of Duty.
Did you say 2016?
For the PlayStation 4 Pro, yeah. That's when I got mine. I got it on release day.
The Xbox One S with 4K HDR and all that came out in 2016. Because I'm looking at an article saying the anticipated new new designed Xbox One S starts hitting shelves today.
But that was just a small model. That was just a smaller version.
But it was a smaller model, but they added 4K and HDR to it, which the original model didn't have.
They had the outputs, but it didn't have the capabilities.
So Microsoft released 3 versions of this generation's console then?
Yes.
Yeah.
The X was near the end.
Fuck's sake.
Because the Xbox One X came out when we thought PS5 was going to be announced. In the last E3 or the one before that.
Oh, I never ever thought that was being announced.
Right. So that's the good things this generation. God,
I know Microsoft were teasing.
Whoa!
No, Microsoft were teasing a new console that everyone thought was going to be the next generation one, but it wasn't. It was just another incremental.
It was a beefed up one. Yeah,
we've got the biggest cock fucking console.
It was to beat the Pro,
but they didn't have any games, so it didn't matter.
No, but that was the thing. It
so
was to
I still didn't buy one.
It was to make sure that Xbox left this generation with the world's most powerful console. That was the reason why Project Scarlet or the One X existed. What we're establishing here is that a lot of things Rob didn't pay much attention to because it was annoying as fuck. But anyway, we've established... No, but that was the thing.
There was a bad things.
There was a thing. What happened was they released multiple versions of these consoles. Microsoft needed to do it more times than Sony did. There we go.
And it made Rob do us sad.
No, it just proves without a doubt that I'm backing the right horse here.
I don't know, but then Sony didn't necessarily bring out a different version of their console. They brought out multiple iterations and upgrades.
I got the later version of the console.
They brought out 2 consoles, Marcus.
But software updates. Hardware
the PlayStation
changes.
4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro.
Yeah.
I got the later version of the Pro with the quieter fan.
Yeah, same here.
Did they even do it? Did they? Yeah, but did they even do?
There's actually been 3 versions of the Pro in terms of hardware. Same box.
Probably the base one had
different hardware. Just to try and solve the overheating issue.
Yeah, but not a major, like, marketing...
Oh, no, they're all stealth
model.
launches. Yeah, all stealth launches. But there's been 3 versions of the Pro.
They're not launches, they're just, like, revisions. Because, like, certain hardware goes out of
because they were all
circulation.
released with a bundle. Which is why you had the everyone was after the Red Dead bundle, because that was the latest version of the Pro, and that was the one I got. So they weren't launched with song and dance, they were launched with kissy kissy in the cupboard, in the dark.
I think you're just, I think
No.
that's overcomplicated.
Trust me, when I researched this, I was shocked. I did the exact same
I know
thing
you
you're doing
researched
now.
it because I remember you talking about it, but I mean, what?
Okay,
how
let
much
me do
difference
the
that would have
quick
made?
version, right? Xbox launched a console way back at the start of the generation.
Yep.
Around the time the Pro came out, they did the Xbox One S, which had some additional ports and a handful of additional capabilities, but no real additional punt. And a year later, they put out a more powerful version as well. Whereas Sony just put out one and the more powerful version. Awesome, sorted.
Ditto.
Groove
Let's move on.
Let's talk about bad things, because that was one of the good things, presumably.
Bad things.
We're
Xbox
getting
brought out
towards
3
that,
versions. No.
There's a note to finish on, right?
Oh, definitely on that big.
Well, that's the new console
bombshell.
name. The X Scrotum.
Yeah,
Apologies,
okay,
Xbox.
maybe. Yeah, no, all right then. So, yeah, until next time. I'm not sure. I've still got a PS5 pre-order. I don't think you have any more. Do you, Will?
Due to a household crisis, my pre-order may be for next year. However, that will not stop me ordering Assassin's Watchdog Legion Punk or something like that at some point. So I'll have something to talk about.
That will all be upgradable on the next platform whenever you get round to it. Anyway, so
that's the plan. I've got to decide which one I am least bothered about playing on the shiniest, most hardcore possible technology, and buy that one. I think it's probably Watch Dogs.
I was going to say Watch Dogs
I think it
Legion.
will be, and I think, to be honest, that's a game that I'm probably going to be. That's the least in my crosshairs at the moment. So,
I think it'll see me past Christmas, and hopefully it'll be at the point where I've had the oil tanks replaced, and my central heating works again without an emergency workaround, and I can afford a console without feeling the wife looking at me.
Yeah, no, fair
through
play,
the
fair
walls. I mean, she's looking at me now as I think about it. She can feel me thinking about buying another console, so I think I better wait.
Have you actually cancelled it yet?
Yeah. I cancelled it on my 40th birthday.
Oh, man.
Happy birthday.
That's like the
to
saddest
you.
thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You should have just gone for it anyway and hawked it on eBay, and then that would have paid for your fucking repairs.
As I got home from my birthday lunch, we'd had an oil delivery, heating oil, got back, heating oil pissing around. For the evening of my 40th birthday, whilst the wife dealt with the emergency plumbers, I manned up hard and basically sat in the living room reading a book, sipping beer and trying to pretend that everything was fine while I cancelled my pre-order.
Yeah, you could have. Actually,
Oh,
is it only one per person? Or a maximum?
Yes, it is. And I could have been a shit. And I could have bought it and I could have sold it on. But
No, but then if it was more than one, you could have just got someone that pre-ordered 2 of them, hawk one, that will pay for your repairs, and then...
yeah, it's not me though. So it was someone else. I'm certain it's someone else. But no,
I
I
would have
cancelled
just
it.
been.
I'm certain I could have sold it for a profit, but it's not me.
Tell you what, you need to buy like a large router and stretch it out a bit, and put that on eBay.
I will get to the point where I'm ready to buy it, and next year I'll get the one with the slightly revised hardware that doesn't melt.
With the D.
It's bound to.
Yeah. I mean, everyone does say don't buy the day one console, right? That's where the red ring of death and all that stuff comes in. So, actually, I'm just being clever by doing that, honestly.
See,
Nothing to do
I
with
reckon this
accidentally
won't
filling
have
up
the
a
red ring
oil
of
tank.
death. I reckon the way it looks, it'll have the red eye of Sauron just floating above the console and just sort of burning into your wallet and your soul. All of your games will
But
just
first the wallet,
magically
yeah.
appear on there and your money will just drop through the floor.
Sounds about right.
I think I'm just going to fade this episode out.
We're never going to stop, yeah.
Yeah. we could fade out with like Xbox One X names. Xbox 11 XX1111 X111 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 X111
I'll stop
X111
recording
X11.
Yeah.
There's your fade out.